Chapter 11 of A Series of Lessons in Raja Yoga. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Siddharth. A Series of Lessons in Raja Yoga by Yogi Ramacharaka. Chapter 11. The human mind has the power of attending to only one object at a time, although it is able to pass from one object to another with marvelous degree of speed, so rapidly, in fact, that some have held that it could grasp several things at once. But the best authorities, Eastern and Western, hold the single idea theory as being correct. On this point, we may quote a few authorities. Jouffroy says that it is established by experience that we cannot give our attention to two different objects at the same time, and Holland states that two thoughts, however closely related to one another, cannot be presumed to exist at the same time, and Lewis has told us that the nature of our organism prevents our having more than one aspect of an object at each instant presented to the consciousness. Watley says the best philosophers are agreed that the mind cannot actually attend to more than one thing at a time, but when it appears to be doing so, it is really shifting with prodigious rapidity backward and forward from one to the other. By giving a concentrated voluntary attention to an object, we not only are able to see and think about it with the greatest possible degree of clearness, but the mind has a tendency under such circumstances to bring into the field of consciousness all different ideas associated in our memory with that object or subject, and to build around the object or subject a mass of associated facts and information. And at the same time, the attention given the subject makes more vivid and clear all that we learn about the thing at the time, and in fact, all that we may afterwards learn about it. It seems to cut a channel through which knowledge flows. Attention magnifies and increases the powers of perception, and greatly aids the exercise of the perceptive faculties by paying attention to something seen or heard. One is enabled to observe the details of the things seen or heard, and where the inattentive mind acquires, say, 3 impressions, the attentive mind absorbs 3 times 3, or perhaps 3 times 3 times 3, or 27, and, as we have just said, attention brings into play the powers of association and gives us the loose end of an almost infinite chain of associated facts stored away into our memory, forming new combinations of facts which we have never grouped together before, and bring out into the field of consciousness all the many scraps of information regarding the thing to which we are giving attention. The proof of this is within the experience of everyone, whereas the one who does not remember sitting down to some writing, painting, reading, etc. with interest and attention, and finding, much to his surprise, what a flow of facts regarding the matter in hand was passing through his mind. Attention seems to focus all the knowledge of a thing that you possess, and by bringing it to a point enables you to combine, associate, classify, etc., and thus create new knowledge. Gibbon tells us that after he gave a brief glance and consideration to a new subject, he suspended further work upon it, and allowed his mind, under concentrated attention, to bring forth all his associated knowledge regarding the subject, after which he renewed the task with increased power and efficiency. The more one's attention is fixed upon a subject under consideration, the deeper is the impression which the subject leaves upon the mind, and the easier will it be for him to afterwards pursue the same train of thought and work. Attention is a prerequisite of good memory, and in fact there can be no memory at all unless some degree of attention is given. The degree of memory depends upon the degree of attention and interest, and when it is considered that the work of today is made efficient by the memory of things learned yesterday, the day before yesterday, and so on, it is seen that the degree of attention given today regulates the quality of the work of tomorrow. Some authorities have described genius as the result of great powers of attention, or, at least, that the two seem to run together. Some writer has said that possibly the best definition of genius is the power of concentrating upon some one subject until its possibilities are exhausted and absorbed. Simpson has said that the power and habit of thinking closely and continuously upon the subject at hand, to the exclusion, for the time, of all other subjects, is one of the principal, if indeed not the principal means of success. Sir Isaac Newton has told his plan of absorbing information and knowledge. He has stated that he would keep the subject under consideration before him continually, and then would wait till the first dawning of perception gradually brightened into a clear light, little by little, a mental sunrise, in fact. That sage observer, Dr. Abercrombie, has written that he considered that he knew of no more important rule for rising to eminence in any profession or occupation than the ability to do one thing at a time, avoiding all distracting and diverting objects or subjects, and keeping the leading matter continually before the mind. And others have added that such a course will enable one to observe relations between the subject and other things that will not be apparent to the careless observer or student. The degree of attention cultivated by a man is the degree of his capacity for intellectual work. As we have said, the great men of all walks of life have developed this faculty to a wonderful degree, and many of them seem to get results intuitively, whereas in truth they obtain by reason of their concentrated power of attention, which enables them to see right into the center of the subject or proposition, and all around it, back and front, and all sides, in a space of time incredible to the man who has not cultivated this mighty power. Men who have devoted much attention to some special line of work or research are able to act almost as if they possessed second sight, providing the subject is within their favorite field of endeavor. Attention quickens every one of the faculties, the reasoning faculties, the senses, the deriding qualities, the analytical faculties, and so on, each being given a fine edge by their use under concentrated tension. And on the other hand, there is no surer indication of a weak mind than the deficiency in attention. This weakness may arise from the illness or physical weakness reacting upon the brain, in which case the trouble is but temporary, or it may arise from the lack of mental development. Imbeciles and idiots have little or no attention. The great French psychologist Lois, speaking of this fact, says imbeciles and idiots see badly, hear badly, feel badly, and their sensorium is, in consequence, in a similar condition of sensitive poverty. Its impressionability for the things of external world is at a minimum, its sensibility weak, and consequently it is difficult to provoke the physiological condition necessary for the absorption of the external impression. In old age the attention is the first faculty to show signs of decay. Some authorities have held that the memory was the first faculty to be affected by the approach of old age, but this is incorrect, for it is a matter of common experience that the aged manifest a wonderfully clear memory of events occurring in the far past. The reason that their memory of recent events is so poor is because of their failing powers of attention has prevented them from receiving strong, clear mental impressions, and as is the impression, so is the memory. Their early impressions, having been clear and strong, are easily recalled, while the later ones, being weak, are recalled with difficulty. If the memory were at fault, it would be difficult for them to recall any impression, recent or far distant in time. But we must stop quoting examples and authorities and urging upon you the importance of the faculty of attention. If you do not realize it, it is because you have not given the subject the attention that you should have exercised, and further repetition would not remedy matters. Admitting the importance of attention from the psychological point of view, not to speak of the occult side of the subject, is it not a matter of importance for you to start in to cultivate that faculty? We think so, and the only way to cultivate any mental or physical part or faculty is to exercise it. Exercise uses up a muscle or mental faculty, but the organism makes haste to rush to the scene additional material, cell, stuff, nerve, force, etc., to repair the waste, and it always sends a little more than is needed. and this little more continually accruing and increasing is what increases the muscle and brain centers, and improved and strengthened brain centers give the mind better instruments with which to work. One of the first things to do in the cultivation of attention is to learn to think of and do one thing at a time. Acquiring the knack or habit of attending closely to the things before us, and then passing on to the next, and treating it in the same way, is most conducive to success, and its practice is the best exercise for the cultivation of the faculty of attention. And on the contrary, there is nothing more harmful from the point of view of successful performance, and nothing that will do more to destroy the power of giving attention, than the habit of trying to do one thing while thinking of another. The thinking part of the mind and the acting part should work together, not in opposition. Dr. Beatty, speaking of the subject, tells us, "It is a matter of no small importance that we acquire the habit of doing only one thing at a time, by which I mean that while attending to any one object, our thoughts ought not to wander to another." And Granville adds, "A frequent cause of failure in the faculty of attention is striving to think of more than one thing at a time," and Kay quotes, approving, a writer who says, "She did things easily because she attended to do them in the doing. When she made bread, she thought of the bread, and not of the fashion of her next dress, or of her partner at the last dance." Lord Chesterfield said, "There is time enough for everything in the course of the day, if you do but one thing at a time, but there is not enough in the year if you try to do two things at a time." To attain the best results one should practice concentrating upon the task before him, shutting out so far as possible every other idea or thought. One should even forget self, personality, in such cases, as there is nothing more destructive of good thinking than to allow morbid self-consciousness to intrude. One does best when he forgets himself in his work, and sinks his personality in the creative work. The earnest man or woman is the one who sinks personality in the desired result, or performance of the task undertaken. The actor or preacher or orator or writer must lose sight of himself to get the best results. Keep the attention fixed on the thing before you, and let the self take care of itself. In connection with the above, we may relate an anecdote of Watley that may be interesting in connection with the consideration of this subject of losing one's self in the task. He was asked for a recipe for bashfulness, and replied that the person was bashful simply because he was thinking of himself and the impression he was making. His recipe was that the young man should think of others, of the pleasure he could give them, and in that way he would forget all about himself. The prescription is said to have effected the cure. The same authority has written, "Let both the extemporary speaker and the reader of his own compositions study to avoid, as far as possible, all thoughts of self, earnestly fixing the mind on the matter of what is delivered, and they will feel less that embarrassment which arises from the thought of what opinion the hearers will form of them." The same writer, Watley, seems to have made quite a study of attention, and has given us some interesting information on its details. The following may be read with interest, and if properly understood may be employed to advantage. He says, "It is a fact, and a very curious one, that many people find they can best attend to any serious matter when they are occupied with something else which requires a little, but a little, attention, such as working with the needle, cutting open paper leaves, or, for want of some such employment, fiddling anyhow with fingers." He does not give the reason for this, and at first sight it might seem like a contradiction of the one thing at a time idea, but a closer examination will show us that the minor work, the cutting leaves, etc., is in the nature of any involuntary or automatic movement, inasmuch as it requires little or no voluntary action, and seems to do itself. It does not take off the attention from the main subject, but perhaps acts to catch the waste attention that often tries to divide the attention from some voluntary act to another. The habit mind may be doing one thing while the attention is fixed on another. For instance, One may be writing with his attention firmly fixed upon the thought he wishes to express, while at the time his hand is doing the writing, apparently with no attention being given. But let a boy or person unaccustomed to writing try to express his thoughts in this way, and you will find that he is hampered in the flow of his thoughts by the fact that he has to give much attention to the mechanical act of writing. In the same way, the beginner on the typewriter finds it difficult to compose to the machine, while the experienced typist finds mechanical movements no hindrance whatever to the flow of the thought and focusing of attention. In fact, many find that they can compose much better while using the typewriter than they can by dictating to a stenographer. We think you will see the principle. And now for a little mental drill and attention, that you may be started on the road to cultivate this important faculty. End of chapter 11.